picture this: the shimmering lights of the 1917's disco era, the roar of adoring fans, and the glittering allure of Abba's infectious melodies echoing through concert halls. But behind the radiant smiles and iconic harmonies was a simmering tension hidden beneath layers of sequins and polished performances. Today, Freda shocks the world by unveiling a different side of Agnetha, peeling back the curtain on years of conflicts, scandals, and personal struggles that few dared to acknowledge. Though Abba's harmonies blended seamlessly, the relationship between Freda and Agnetha was anything but harmonious. Freda, the fierce, passionate brunette with a fiery temper, often clashed with Agnetha, the reserved blonde with a knack for perfectionism. Their personalities were like oil and water. Freda's dynamic stage presence contrasted sharply with Agnetha's more calculated, controlled demeanor, and tensions mounted behind the scenes. Their conflicts weren't just about artistic differences. Freda reportedly grew frustrated with Agnetha's aloofness and her insistence on isolating herself during tours. While Freda craved camaraderie, Agnetha often distanced herself, fueling a cold war within the band. This wasn't just a case of creative differences. It was a personal battle rooted in resentment, envy, and unspoken grievances. Freda's recent revelations paint Agnetha as difficult, manipulative even, often leveraging her vulnerabilities to gain sympathy while subtly undermining those around her. Agnetha's troubles didn't stop with Abba. Her personal life was a storm of failed relationships, family drama, and emotional instability. After her highly publicized divorce from Bjorn Ulvaeus, Agnetha spiraled into a cycle of heartbreak and loneliness. She struggled with the loss of her family's unity, battling feelings of abandonment and insecurity. Her relationship with her children became strained as she grappled with balancing fame and motherhood. Her love life was a series of tumultuous affairs, each ending in heartbreak. One particularly scandalous relationship involved a younger man, Thomas Sonnenfeld, whose brief romance with Agnetha ended disastrously, leaving her emotionally wrecked. But perhaps the most bizarre chapter was her entanglement with a Dutch stalker, Geert van der Graaf. Their unsettling dynamic turned into a real-life thriller, with Agnetha unable to escape his obsessive grip, even after legal interventions. This bizarre relationship exposed Agnetha's vulnerability and questionable judgment, making headlines and raising eyebrows across Europe. Agnetha wasn't just at odds with Freda. Her strained relationships extended to other figures in the music industry. Producers and managers often found her difficult to work with, citing her controlling nature and reluctance to compromise. She clashed with record executives over creative control, unwilling to bend to commercial pressures. This stubbornness, while contributing to her artistic integrity, also alienated colleagues and fueled her reputation as temperamental. In recording studios, tensions would flare as Agnetha insisted on multiple retakes, obsessing over minor details that left producers frustrated. Her refusal to accept constructive criticism created an atmosphere thick with tension, as collaborators walked on eggshells, afraid to trigger her volatile temper. Some claimed she had an uncanny ability to hold grudges, turning small disagreements into long-standing feuds. Even within her solo career, Agnetha struggled to maintain positive professional relationships. Her solo projects, though successful, were marred by behind-the-scenes drama. Collaborators described her as moody and unpredictable, her perfectionism often turning into paranoia. She had a knack for pushing people away, her emotional walls fortified by years of fame-induced isolation. There were whispered stories of heated arguments during studio sessions, doors slamming, and projects abruptly halted due to her sudden changes of heart. One moment she was enthusiastic, the next withdrawn and distant, leaving those around her bewildered and exhausted. Her distrust extended beyond creative circles. Business managers and publicists found her challenging, citing her refusal to engage with promotional activities and her disdain for the media. Agnetha viewed interviews as invasive interrogations, her guarded responses often misconstrued as arrogance. This only deepened the chasm between her and the industry, branding her as a recluse difficult to work with. Behind the glamour of her solo career was a battlefield littered with broken professional relationships, unfulfilled collaborations, and opportunities lost to her own insecurities. The very traits that defined her artistry became the barriers that isolated her, leaving a trail of fractured partnerships and unspoken resentments. Fame wasn't kind to Agnetha. The pressures of stardom, relentless touring, and media scrutiny took a toll on her mental health. She suffered from crippling anxiety, fear of flying, and bouts of depression. Her fear of flying was so severe it limited Abba's touring schedule, causing friction within the band and resentment from Freda, who believed Agnetha's phobias were more about control than genuine fear. Agnetha's reclusive lifestyle post-Abba wasn't just a personal choice. It was a necessity born from her fragile mental state. She withdrew from the public eye, living in near seclusion on her island estate in Sweden. This isolation fed into her struggles, creating a cycle of loneliness and paranoia that defined her later years. Days blurred into nights as she wandered through the echoing halls of her home, haunted by memories of the past and tormented by the fear of being forgotten. The once vibrant star became a shadow of herself, trapped in a self-imposed prison of anxiety and regret. Her mind often spiraled into dark places, plagued by obsessive thoughts and an overwhelming sense of dread. Even the simplest tasks felt insurmountable. Agnetha battled insomnia, her restless nights filled with the echoes of distant applause that now felt like a cruel reminder of a world she could no longer face. Her phone gathered dust as calls from old friends went unanswered, relationships crumbling under the weight of her isolation. The outside world became an enemy, a source of constant fear and suspicion. Every headline, every photograph felt invasive, stripping away the last remnants of her privacy. She built emotional walls so high that not even her closest family members could climb over them. The fame that once brought her adoration had morphed into a curse, leaving Agnetha to wrestle with ghosts of her own making. For Agnetha, fame was a double-edged sword, a blessing that propelled her to global stardom and a curse that stole her sense of normalcy. Despite the millions of fans who adored her, she often felt suffocated by the very spotlight that had once been her dream. The adoration of strangers contrasted sharply with the emptiness she felt when the stage lights dimmed. In the silence of her secluded home, Agnetha grappled with the paradox of longing for connection while simultaneously fearing it. She craved genuine relationships, but distrusted those who approached her, suspecting ulterior motives lurking behind every smile. Her days became a routine of avoidance, avoiding calls, avoiding people, and most tragically, avoiding herself. She often stared out of her windows, watching the world move on without her, trapped in the past where Abba's glory days felt both distant and painfully present. Her solitude wasn't peaceful, it was deafening, filled with the echoes of what-ifs and could-have-beens. The empty rooms of her home seemed to whisper reminders of conversations left unfinished, of friendships lost, and of love that slipped through her fingers like grains of sand. Her reflection in the mirror became a stranger's face, a constant reminder of time's unrelenting passage and the isolation she had chosen, yet deeply regretted. The walls that once protected her from the chaos of the outside world now felt like a suffocating cage, closing in with every silent day that passed. The contrast between the roaring crowds she once commanded and the hollow silence of her present existence was unbearable, a haunting testament to the fragility of fame. Agnetha's story is not just about the cost of fame, but the unbearable weight of living in its aftermath, where applause fades but the echoes linger, haunting every quiet moment. While Abba's music remains timeless, the cracks in their personal relationships are undeniable. Freda's candid revelations have pulled back the curtain on Agnetha's troubled life, exposing a legacy not just of musical brilliance, but of personal turmoil. Agnetha's story is one of contrasts. Glittering success shadowed by emotional chaos, a voice that enchanted millions but masked a heart scarred by conflict and regret. The world may have danced to Abba's upbeat anthems, but behind the scenes, the music was accompanied by a darker, discordant tune, one that Freda has finally dared to play for all to hear. This melody, woven with the bitterness of betrayal, echoes the hidden fractures within Abba's glittering facade. The glamour and fame were mere masks, concealing a world where friendships crumbled, love turned sour, and personal demons thrived in the shadows. Agnetha's legacy, though etched in the annals of music history, carries the stains of scandals, fractured bonds, and the haunting echoes of choices made and paths not taken. The contrast between the jubilant rhythms that defined Abba and the dark undercurrents of Agnetha's personal life paints a portrait not just of a star, but of a woman lost within her own legend. In the end, it's a legacy that forces us to question whether true success can ever exist without sacrifice, and whether the price Agnetha paid was worth the fleeting brilliance of fame.